It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And you came up from downstairs. So
I did.
The whole tour. Yeah, I work out of downstairs.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I run a podcast and all that, so been a part of the studio here. Yeah, it's been an incredible addition. This whole area was packed on Tuesday night.
Oh, really?
Everybody interested in the startup studio.
It was really cool.
Glad you're here, man.
Yeah,
Cool.
Subi, thanks. Actually, it looks like it's all right.
Thank you.
Sure. Right around there. All the way. We'll jump. You ready? Downstairs.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I hope so.
And we can just, I can roll through exactly what I do.
Am I good to go?
You're good to go, man. Hit record.
Just hit record, that's it?
Yeah, so, yeah, he was,
I mean, adjust the
levels.
levels
Okay.
as you guys are talking. But yeah, you guys are rocking. Both
So you're like,
mics
the
are on.
lights get flashy if you're too high?
Yeah.
Does anything happen if you're too low? I guess it doesn't know if you're too low.
I mean, you can always boost it in editing, but it's always better just to record it clean.
Yeah.
So. Okay, cool. Yeah, we got a room downstairs. We don't have the fancy ones downstairs.
Thankfully.
We're gonna go down and just, I'll do a tutorial like what we did yesterday, and then probably a Skype thing, and then you guys are gonna be till 6 or whatever, like do an hour.
Yeah,
Probably.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
cool, man. And then I'll be here and I'll grab my mics when you're done and rock on.
Wish me luck.
Godspeed.
Thank you. Very excited about to do the first ever episode in the brand new studio podcasting. David Klein, phenomenal guy, is here with us today. It's going to be a great show. Okay.
Right here.
You're right there, man.
Can I get a coaster or something?
I don't see any coasters.
Paper towel for this one.
Yeah, let me grab it too.
Hmm?
That's Skylar. Trying to like your,
Hmm?
get all here. You good?
I'm good.
Alright, so here's what I think is going to happen, how we're going to do this.
Okay.
I think we should do 3 different things, and we'll just start with 2.
Okay.
See how that goes. I think we should do real estate,
Okay.
obviously, and then I want to try one on Jewish.
Okay.
Judaism.
Alright.
Okay. What do you think about that?
Sure.
I think we could do that
Okay.
in a way that's, and then if there's any signals of like, if I hit any hot, is there anything you don't want me to talk about? Is there?
Can't really talk about construction and development.
Okay.
Because Oh, just because I'm in litigation right now, so
Okay.
there's not anything to be said that
Okay.
could force that.
Of course. No, I know. So like that's a big goal.
Right.
Anything specific?
Just ask whatever you want to talk about, and
Okay.
if I don't want to talk about it, I'll tell you I don't want to talk about it. How's that?
Okay, that works for me. All right, you want to start with real estate or Jewish?
Whatever you want to start with. Do you have a list of questions?
Yeah.
You recording this?
Not yet, but I'm going to. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, yeah.
How's everyone doing? My name is Steven Rosenberg, and welcome to the Influencer Media Alliance podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, Mr. David Klein, who is a real estate mogul, a huge community man, and someone that I think is very influential here in Austin, Texas, and someday worldwide. David, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, especially after that introduction, which might be slightly inflated, but it is appreciated nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
And by slightly, probably very inflated.
I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see what comes out of this discussion.
So, for the couple people out there in the world that don't know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself, explain like what it is that you do,
Okay.
what makes you tick?
So I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. I've been in Austin, Texas for a little over 18 years. I moved here to go to college at University of Texas.
Do you feel good about that?
About what?
That intro?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do it one more time.
Why?
Because we are.
Okay.
Just trust me.
Okay.
It'll be worth it. Ready?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. I just needed to make sure we had a good tone. So I'm ready.
All right, you're ready now. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Good. I'm glad that you're ready. How's everyone doing? My name is Steven Rosenberg, and welcome to the Influencer Media Alliance podcast. I have the very one and only David Klein with me today, who is a real estate mogul here in Austin, Texas, an awesome community man, and someone that I think is very much an influencer, up and coming, on the rise. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Steven. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So why don't you tell a couple people out there who don't know who you are, what it is that you do, and a little bit about what makes you tick.
So from a business perspective, I predominantly do real estate acquisition, a little bit of development, and we do all of our real estate property management in-house.
Okay.
We just oversee it from a top-level perspective. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. My family was in the steel fabrication business. That was a business that my great-grandfather and his brother started in the early 20s when they
Wow.
immigrated over from Europe, and they were dropped off in the southeast, and they were moving around till they found work, and they started this business. And my grandfather grew the business, and my father bought my grandfather and his cousins out of the business to be the sole owner in the early 1980s. And that's a much longer story for a different podcast, but ultimately grew the business to pretty tremendous heights and sold the company in 2000. And then the company that bought us sold us after 9/11 because they had to sell all their non-core assets, and because they were a broadcasting company and we were a steel manufacturing company and tower erection company, we were one of them. So we got sold. The company that bought us broke us off into pieces, and the company ceased to exist in 2004. And I grew up in the business and always thought that I would be in that business, and so I never had any other interest or expectations to do anything else. I just thought being in the family business and being in the steel business was always going to be my path. But you know, life has a way of changing drastically from what you think it will end up as when you're 18. And so when I came to college, my dad got into my ear about him and I partnering and buying a house I could live in while I was in college, and then get like a 4 or 5 bedroom house I could rent out to my roommates and collect rent from them while I lived there. And when I was 18, it was just a very far-fetched idea to me at the time, and I was really mostly interested in just being a college freshman and pledging a fraternity and partying and somewhat going to school, but mostly just living the college life.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was going through college, I had different jobs while I was going to school. Summer after my freshman year of college, I sold books door to door for the Southwestern Company, and that's a company that's been around for a very long time, but the type of thing where they train you up for a week and send you to a location where you don't know anybody and they want you to work 80 hours a week knocking on doors. And so I did that the summer of 2000 after my freshman year and did well at it, but it was not a fun job. It was a very hard job, especially as a 19-year-old. But it was definitely a kind of a growing up experience and just a new experience, which was good. And then I came back to school and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. My dad had sold the company by that time, but he was still running it, still involved in it, and thinking about real estate a little bit. Then went home after my sophomore year, worked in the family business, and that was the last time I worked in the family business. Came back my junior year, got my real estate license, did apartment locating as a part-time job while I was in college, and then the summer before my senior year in 2002, I bought my first house. And so it was 2002 when,
So 2002 was your year.
2002 is when I started my business.
That
Right?
was like,
That's when I started the business, and to put into perspective of how different the lending environment was and the economy was in 2002, this was after the dot-com crash in 2000, a couple of years, things had kind of recovered, but the lending markets, as we all found out later with the Great Recession in 2008, were really loose at that time. So as a 21-year-old with no credit, I was able to get a loan by myself with 90% loan to cost, and bought this single-family home. And I would go by. I was a senior in college. The guys I rented it to were juniors, and I put it under contract with a 2-week option period. There were no renters a month before school started, and the whole thing was if we could get renters in to cover the monthly nut, then we were going to buy the property. I was going to buy the property, and so I did, and that's what happened. It was like a $2,400 monthly payment to cover principal, interest, taxes, insurance, a little bit of maintenance, and we were able to get a lease for $2,600, and that's how the business started. And so my senior year.
So hold on, did you know that it was going to be your career at that time, or was it still just like, oh, okay, this is a cool business, or this is profitable, or this just makes sense for now?
It wasn't really ever something where I was pursuing a career path, right?
Okay.
Like I want to have a career and I'm pursuing this. It was just about, I want to be in business, I want to start a business. Real estate seems interesting. I grew up in steel fabrication, which is a real tangible business.
Right.
For better or worse, I didn't get engaged in a lot of technology early on when technology was really evolving, although technology always evolves. But I just liked it. The idea to see my dad playing in my head several years earlier was kind of growing. So it's like, buy a house, see what that's like. And that's all I thought about. It's like, all right, something to do.
So you knew from day one you were going to be an entrepreneur. Like there was no, that's how it was for me. Like there was never any other career. I was like, didn't want to be a fireman, didn't want to be knew I was going to own a business. I didn't know what it was. So I just knew.
Right. So different in respects to the fact where people were like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to go start this business. I'm going to find the need and I'm going to go find, something that drives me. And I'm going to go create. And maybe I'm a serial entrepreneur and I create lots of businesses. If you talk about like day one when I was growing up, what I thought I was going to do, I thought I was going to be the fourth generation of my family business. So all I thought I ever was going to do was be in the steel fabrication business and carry on that lineage. And that pride of doing that was all that I really cared about. That was what was important to me. I never thought I would do anything else. When I came to college at UT, my major was engineering, and the idea was that I would get a master's in business, and that was because I would have an engineering background to be able to understand just for the steel business, right? Because we had an engineering department in our tower division. At the height, the company had about 500 people, and we had, it was a big company. We did a lot of big stuff. We had, an antenna on top of the Sears Tower in Chicago. We did the Sutro Tower in San Francisco. We had an antenna on top of the World Trade Centers when they fell. I mean, we did the BMW plant in South Carolina. We've done stuff internationally. It was just, it was a business that had been around a long time. And although I didn't really understand the scope of the business or the breadth of the business and what it really was, because when you're young, you just don't get it. When you're in something and you can't see it from the outside, you just think it's the norm. You don't really understand how special it is. I mean, I knew it was special and I knew it was something that I was expected to do and that I had a lot of pride in doing. But aside from that, it's just kind of, I grew up, I went to school, and my brother was the first male in my family to graduate college. So it wasn't like my parents. Education was a lot more. Not that it was important or unimportant, but it was something that was more pursued on my mom's side. Whereas on my dad's side, it was more about entrepreneurship. And so seeing a grandfather and a father that didn't have college degrees, although my dad did go to college and he took a lot of classes, he just never finished, or maybe he didn't have the grades to pass the classes to finish. But to see a success from that, you know, I knew that going to school and passing classes was important, but never had the drive to make straight A's or anything like that. And, you know, I started realizing pretty early on that the real world experience was what was most important. And so
Did you find that difficult growing up? Like, because everyone else, society, socially, says that that's wrong. Like, you have to get a college education. You have to, like, you know, like, what you said is true.
I think less now than maybe 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I mean, certainly look at, like, Peter Thiel, right? And his push to try and coax people out of college to try and start their own businesses. And I think, you know, I think the problem with media and with the content that we're exposed to constantly is you see the best of what's out there, right? And it makes it, and the very best, the experts that do these things make it look easy. And I think if you were to ask anybody who's exceptionally successful or moderately successful or just kind of minorly successful, they're going to tell you that it's just fucking hard, right? And I think that that's a hard thing to understand. You don't really get that understanding until you've gone through it and you've had the experience. And I think when you're growing up in school or going to school and you know, you're learning the data points of doing whatever business you're pursuing, you're really not, you're getting a good foundation and fundamentals, but you're not learning what you really need to learn your business.
Right.
And as far as being entrepreneurial or going to college, I just think we live in a society where there's just so many people, and the vast majority of them are not going to be entrepreneurs for a handful of reasons, right? It's hard, it's not secure, it's stressful, it's, you know, it can cause angst, whatever it can be, but, you know, the entrepreneur is in the minority of the population, right? So with just the statistics of it, society's going to lean towards get your degree, you need your degree so you can get a job. But, you know, I think that that's been changing a lot with the progressive nature of technology taking away a lot of jobs in our society, right? So like a lot of the blue collar jobs that happen, like I grew up in steel, right? The majority of our employees were people who worked in the plant, right?
Okay.
In the fabrication, running the saws, running the drills, things like that. And we all know that labor is dwindling because technology is taking its place, right?
Artificial intelligence,
right,
robots.
Right, and that's just going to continue to happen, which is then spurring on more people to start their own businesses, right? So I don't really buy into the whole societal norm thing. You know, it's hard when you're growing up. I mean, at this point in my life, you know, I'm 36 now, I'll be 37 in a few months, and I've been in business for over 15 years. You know, I started my business when I was in college, and so, you know, I've gone through peaks and valleys of business, highs and lows, you know, good things happening, bad things happening, and have been able to make it out and continue to stay in business. And so it's given me a lot of perspective, and I just don't really you know, buy into societal norms. I just think, you know, in general that we live in a strange society, in a strange world, but to really be, you know, motivated or have the way that I think and act guided by, you know, what society or people that I don't know think, who don't know me, I just think it's an empty exercise, and I don't think it's a very productive one.
I think that's a very, very valid point. All right, so I think people have a really good understanding of like where you lie in terms of like moral compass, ethics, you know, your background. Now I want to talk about real estate in Austin, Texas. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I think that Austin, Texas is the next up-and-coming San Francisco. I think there is a lot of opportunity here, especially if you're looking at it from a 10, 20, 30-year perspective. And for people that are either currently in the real estate market here or growing in the real estate market here, and the people that are just wanting to get started out. You know, I think touching on those things and what to look at as a broad spectrum first, and then maybe narrowing down into other more tactful things.
So Austin as a real estate community is, you know, growing at a blistering rate, right? So for the past, since, you know, you could break it off into time segments, right? So the last 5 years has been crazy how much development has happened, right? So coming out of the recession, the main reason why there wasn't a lot of development is because liquidity froze up in the banking system, right? And so all this real estate development, and real estate's a very capital intensive business, right? It requires a lot of capital, which requires a lot of leverage, and there's basically kind of a pecking order of how a capital stack works, right? You typically have, you know, big institutions and insurance companies and just other big organizations that have a lot of capital to place that issue debt, right? So that's like the majority of the capital stack at the bottom, and then you've got your equity that has to go in, right? And then within the equity, it can be structured in a lot of ways, right? So you typically have a sponsor that puts a deal together that goes and raises money. That can be a variety of ways. It could be through raising money through partnerships. It could be getting additional debt through bridge loans, things like that. But you know, real estate in general, you know, is a long business, right?
Okay.
So it's not like there's, you know, if you want to be a developer and owner of real estate, it requires a lot of patience. So if you want to, and the way that things are happening in Austin right now, because the market is so hot, things are incredibly expensive. And so if you're looking to, you know, build your wealth in real estate, and real estate ownership is a great wealth building mechanism. But because it is a tangible asset, and because it has, you know, it's an asset that has peaks and valleys, it appreciates. You can use depreciation for your taxes, right? But if you're looking at kind of how you get your capital out of it, it's just a long business, right? You're not going to buy a property today. It's rare that you buy a property and then you can flip it months down the road, right? That happens in certain time frames of cycles, right? So like if you would have bought a property in Austin in 2012, 13, in 2014, 2015, things are appreciating so fast that you could have sold it, right? And you could have moved on. But I don't think that's a really good long-term strategy for the masses, right? So you certainly should not throw yourself into real estate like renovations or development or anything like that if you don't have a tremendous amount of time to devote to it, right? And if you can't really devote the time and expertise to watch your assets. And certainly don't want to try and over-leverage yourself. But I'm getting kind of far away from what your question was. Your question is kind of what's going on with real estate in Austin and what's the future look like? Well, I mean, I think the statistics show that Austin's going to double in size in the next 25 years, right? So if we go from 2 million today to 4 million in 25 years, where are people going to go? Where are they going to be? And will real estate appreciate? Well, with inflation, you know that real estate's going to appreciate over the long term. And the history of, you know, real estate and property ownership shows that if you just hold on to an asset long enough, you're going to be okay. For example, if you would have bought something at the height of the economy before the Great Recession, 2007, you would have had a really hard time with that property, getting out of it, making money in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. But if you still owned it today, 10 years later, you would have a property that is worth more than what you bought it for.
But you have to have deep enough pockets. I mean,
right.
Not as a career though. Like if you're playing the long game, I mean, but like as a career, you have to find a way to turn over.
Right. I mean, there's so many different ways to structure a deal, right? Depending on how much equity you have, what your strategy is, what your business model is. I mean, if you're looking to flip homes, you know, it's a totally different business model than if you're looking to cash flow a income producing passive investment that you're going to hold for 10 years, right? And they have different tax implications, and they have different workloads and different risks and different rewards to it. So if you're just somebody that's looking to build wealth and wants to build their net worth and just create passive revenue streams over time, I think finding properties in the path of growth in cities like Austin, and Austin's not the only one, but a city like Austin to buy into and hold on to will serve you well. And the most important thing in owning real estate is just making sure you have some cash behind in case something happens. And that if, you know, I think a big mistake that a lot of people make when they look at real estate, for example, I have a friend that's, you know, just bought a lot on the east side, great location, and he sent me his budget and pro forma, and, you know, I mean, he's new into real estate, owns a rental property fourplex, doing really well with that, wants to build a property that has a front house and maybe like a back kind of garage apartment, so he can live in one of those and rent out another one of those, which is a great idea. But when he showed me his budget, he was about $100,000 off on what he probably needed to budget for. And that's not because, I mean, that's because that he's never developed before, right? So, I mean, you have to have contingencies. You have to be conscious of what origination fees are. You know what origination fee was, which is the fee you're going to pay to get your loan from a bank. There's other underwriting fees. There's design fees. There's, you know, all sorts of stuff in a budget. And that's how people get upside down in real estate. When you get too aggressive. You know, somebody told me a few years ago when I was working on a deal, it's okay if we're wrong, let's just be wrong on the right side. Meaning, make sure you have enough money behind so that you can recover in case you're off on your numbers.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. It's happen to everybody in the business. And if you're wrong on the right side, then you can either pull that money down or you just put less money in. So it's I think that's a really important lesson in real estate if you're going to develop or acquire or hold long term. But don't over leverage yourself. You know, don't stretch yourself too thin, and have cash behind in case you need it.
Because then you can implode.
Right.
Quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, with that, how much do you think technology will affect sort of the things that you're talking about? So you named a number of different things. Is there any kind of software or program that manages those things? Like,
so, in terms of what?
well, I mean, so like QuickBooks is
Mhm.
for accounting.
Right.
Is there some kind of software that manages all the things that you just talked about? The things that you have to take into consideration?
So, you know, in some of the projects I've worked on and seen with general contractors, there's programs to track your development. You can get online and buy modeling templates to model out all sorts of real estate development budgets and pro formas. But you're talking about what kind of software, right? Like
Smart.
software that has your templates in it and you can track it through. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that out there. But when you're talking about technology, like, is there a technology that's going to replace real estate agents or something like that?
Maybe not replace real estate agents, but
Well, I mean, there's
replace a lot
Zillow,
of the,
there's all that stuff, right? So that's
Mhm.
out there. But I mean, at the end of the day,
that
there's tons of real estate
yeah.
agents out there.
I was gonna
It's
say
so
that
strong.
hasn't really affected it. I mean, how like AI and as things get smarter,
Mhm.
you'll be able to maybe grow your real estate better or bigger as a real estate agent, utilizing that. No, I'm not afraid of it.
Right. So I think the best way to grow faster is to multiply yourself, whether that be through having associates on your team that can do tasks that you just don't have time for. Maybe you're not the strongest at, or that just is not the best use of your time. Or through man, I just blanked out right there. So either tell me your question again.
So basically the question is, will technology be able to not replace real estate agents, but help them be able to grow? And then you started talking about being able to multiply.
Right. So you can do that through, multiplying your team, or I don't really know what kind of artificial intelligence you're going to use to. Because I'm just thinking about my business, right? So
Right.
my business is, predominantly this year I've been focused on acquiring real estate, right?
Okay.
So there's not. Yeah, I'm sure there's artificial intelligence out there. There's definitely mapping technologies. There definitely is mapping technologies out there that a lot of, like retail brokers and developers use to see kind of the distance between, where they are between households and traffic counts, and competitors are where you need to put a specific retail concept or development or whatever, so your location is right. That stuff's out there. With my stuff, with just going out and acquiring stuff, I think that it has a lot to do with me looking and me seeing what's out there. So I can't really answer that question that well to see how artificial intelligence is going to replace people in finding deals, but I'm certain that there's artificial intelligence technology out there that streamlines developing, and there's certainly streamlines developing and managing and accounting and things like that.
So now let's shift it quickly towards more the influence part, social media,
Mhm.
things of this nature. How much has that changed either your specific business or the real estate as an industry, or both?
Yeah, I mean, I think social media has changed every business, right? So from a marketing branding perspective, if you want to build a following, then you need to be on those social media platforms. Again, it's not really wildly important for what I'm doing.
Okay.
Because what I'm doing is I'm acquiring revenue generating assets and trying to either reposition them to then turn around and sell them in the short term, or wanting to hold them long term and add value and push rents over 5 to 10 years.
But if you're pushing rent over 5 to 10 years, you have to market that somehow.
Right. But I mean, so for like our student housing, right, we have certain ways that we market that we find to be the most effective. And so
Okay.
for the specific product type that we're using, social media we haven't found to have the biggest bang for the buck, right?
Mhm.
Because we know that, because I have a lot of student housing properties that cater to Greek life, right? Because
Okay.
they're homes with 4, 5, 6 bedrooms that a lot of the big groups will stay in, right? So we know that they're typically going to come to us, or they're going to go to friends of theirs that are locators, and that's how they're going to lease. You know, I've recently been buying real estate in another market, and it's another student housing market, and it's the same thing, right? Like, there's only a couple of managers that oversee student housing properties of this niche type, so they're going to go there. They know where to go, and then you reach out to the tenants. So kind of that referral system and face-to-face interaction. Now, if you look at like apartment complexes and like the Gables of the world, families, and these people like that, or American campus communities, right? They've got thousands, tens of thousands of units, right? Like having their ads running and showing their specials, because with my student housing, right, we turn at one time of the year in the summer, so it's not like you're leasing up all the time throughout the year. And so we've just found that there's better bang for our buck to work with like locators in today's market. Now, you know, certainly down the line, and it's happening more now, right? Like we do more online advertising through like a Zillow, right?
Okay.
People search there, and Craigslist is actually a productive way
Really?
for people to find stuff. Not so much for the student housing stuff, but I have a mixed use building in Houston that's got some small retail, small creative office suites, and a little bit of residential. And the small office suites are from like 300 square feet to 1,000 square feet, and they're like artist studios, so we attract a lot of artists and small office users. And Craigslist has been really productive for that. But for the retail suites, we use LoopNet, and we use it's another commercial service. It's later in the day. My brain's a little foggy, but we use that sort of technology platforms, which is kind of like commercial MLSs, and then just always helping get your listings out to different brokers in the community, right? So you want to get it out to the people that are working with clients.
Mm-hmm. So, would you ever consider? Have you heard of Facebook's new marketplace? That they're
Yeah. I just don't think that. I don't think people think of Facebook's marketplace as a place to go to look for real estate needs. I think today, right?
Today.
Right.
But isn't that how real estate works? You have to find value before everybody else. On a
Well, if
certain
everybody else
place.
is not using it, then it doesn't really make sense.
Well, there are
to
people
invest.
using it though.
Right, but if like the market that I'm
Is
catering
not
to is not really
using
using
it yet,
then
correct.
it doesn't make sense for me to spend the capital in that direction.
Okay, so
The
you
marketing
think
dollars there.
to invest the marketing dollars,
Right.
not just list it like you would on Craigslist.
Craigslist, or send it out to apartment locators and brokers and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, from what I've heard is that even just having it there from a metadata standpoint, meaning the more places you can distribute Klein Properties or KleinProperties.com or whatever it is to a specific, to all these different platforms, the better chance that your name is going to come up on Zillow or come up on Google or wherever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of it might be that we've been 100% occupied in all of our student housing properties for 15 years.
Of course you
and
have.
so we've been using a specific way to do it, right? And
Because it
the best
works.
way to catch these people is through locators and brokers and referrals and renewals and things like that. And I have tried AdWords. I have tried a lot of that
You've
stuff.
tried.
I've tried it, yeah, and it's just not really worth the money. Now, as markets change and time changes, because my student housing stuff, we turn every year, right? Because they're 12-month leases of student housing stuff, so it gives you, every year it's a new thing. So something, if we, and you always want to try and be on the forefront of what's changing, but right now what we're doing has been working, so I don't really think it's necessary to spend the time or the resources to try and change it if it's not. Fix it if it's not broken. Now,
Right.
that could be famous last words, right?
Correct,
That's
yeah.
like, Blockbuster Video and all that stuff, right? When
Exactly.
Netflix came along. But,
Exactly.
we're trying to be conscious of what's going on. So this year is the first year I've moved into other markets outside of Austin. Just
Okay.
because it's been real hard to find good cash flowing properties in Austin, because again, it's so competitive here and prices are so much higher. And the first time that we worked with third-party management companies managing our stuff. And so because we have so much experience with property management, it helps us kind of monitor what's going on with these other management companies. It's been a pretty steep learning curve, but I feel like we've learned a lot so far and it's been good. But so far things are working, and I'm trying to be conscious of the technology platforms and social media, and you start using words like metadata and stuff like that. I don't really know how that works. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I don't really know how to utilize it. So it's really all about trying to find the best ways to use my time
Mm-hmm.
on a day-to-day basis. And the best ways for me to use my time is to, find assets to acquire.
Exactly.
So,
Well, so in conclusion, probably your top 3 rules for success.
so my dad always says that you should show up on time, return your phone calls, and walk briskly. That's what he said.
Okay. And
And do what you say you're going to do. And if you never lie, you don't have to remember what you said.
very good.
Yeah.
That's a very true statement.
Yeah.
Kind of like doing the right thing is always the right thing.
That's right.
So, one thing I do on the podcast every time is assume that 7 billion people are listening to this right now. If you could
Because
ask,
they are, right?
of course, yeah. I mean, I think it might be 8 billion now. I'm not sure how many listeners.
Second over second $1 billion absorption, billion people absorption.
Is ask one question to the audience. If you could get feedback on a large scale, what would that question be to an audience?
Man, in terms of what? In real estate or what?
Yeah, or unless you have another direction that you want to go with it, but yeah, in real estate.
Oh man, I don't know. You put me on the spot.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like,
Good.
I was just gonna say, it could be a question as simple as, what you think that the next, what do you guys think the best marketing way to get in touch with you if you're looking to rent student property housing? What's the most, or, do you use Craigslist or Zillow more? Something like that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I don't have a question.
All right, fair enough. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Make sure you guys check him out. KleinProperties.com.
KPAustin.com.
KPAustin.com.
Yeah.
David Klein.
Good to be here. Steven Rosenberg in the house.
In the house. Thanks, guys. Okay, cool.
Is it good?
Yeah, I think it was good.
All right, cool.
Do you want to drink water or anything like that? We'll just try to do the second one really quick. That was probably too drawn out.
Are you happy with that?
Are you happy with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of lost my train of thought in the middle.
Yeah, I know. I could tell that really pissed yourself off, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine. I just. Yeah.
What were you thinking? I mean, is there a better way I could have gone about it with you?
No, it was good. I was just talking, and then I think my mind wandered a little bit while I was talking,
Mhm.
and then I was like, oh, I forgot what the second thing was.
We went pretty deep in a couple of areas, so I thought that was good.
Yeah, it's good.
Now, do you think there's a way that it would be interesting to talk about it, maybe once a month? Or some kind of topic that would be, even if it's not with you, just in general real estate, whether it's with the Endeavor guys, whether it's with, but something that I can give
there's all
people
sorts
to
of,
look.
there's all sorts of topics, right? I mean, there's so much construction going on, so I think it'd be interesting to talk to these major players about the challenges in developing real estate because they make it look so simple. People think it's so easy, but it's not. It's fucking hard.
Mhm.
Really hard to do. I can't talk about that because of the stuff that I'm dealing with right now. But if you can get people to talk about that, I think that's a really interesting part of the business, right? Like what it takes to build all of this.
You're right.
The money, right? And the time and the coordination and the people and the consultants and just the foresight and the patience and all of it. And the fact where if your timing's off, it's off. So like C-Home was supposed to break ground in 2006-7 or 2007, I think. C-Home with the condo building and the retail and everything like that.
Back then?
They were supposed to break ground like 2007, 2008. But they couldn't because the recession came.
Okay.
So I think that that's interesting, but I mean, I'm happy to get on and talk more about it. I could talk a lot about this stuff, but so I'm happy to come on more often if you want and
Yeah.
get other people to talk about other things. So
I definitely do. And so, what do you think those next things should be? Or, what else, again, that we could really add value, to where people
why don't you
would-
ask people who listen to it what they want to know about?
Well, of course, I know,
Yeah.
but what I'm trying to do is carve out as one specifically related around real estate.
Right.
Or real estate in Austin. I haven't decided fully.
I mean, what do you think people want to know? What do you want to know about real estate? You're
Yeah,
starting in it.
Right, so how do you do it? How do you start doing it? And then
Let's talk about that. I mean, I think if you talk about stories,
but that's not gonna.
I think stories about deals and how you do deals.
I think that would be cool.
That's more interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like a case study and it's real applicable
Mhm.
in what you're doing.
So next time, could you talk about a specific story, not the one that you're dealing with now,
Right.
for obvious reasons, but like a story,
Sure.
or could you talk about it where it's like in a broad enough way where it's not giving any specifics about anything, but just
Right.
like hypothetically, if these things were to happen, what would that look like?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think that
Sure.
would be okay?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to do this? I'm ready to do the like Jewish one.
Sure, but I gotta go in like 10 minutes.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, it's fine. I only have it till 6.
Well, I guess you only have till 6.
Yeah.
So. That's it. Go ahead.
Alright.
Yeah.
How are you guys doing? My name is Steven Rosenberg, and welcome to Jewish and Newish Podcast. I have a very special guest, David Klein, who is a real estate mogul here in Austin, Texas, as well as a very heavily involved member in the Jewish community. And he's done a lot of wonderful things, both for the Jewish community as well as the Austin community. And we're excited to talk to you guys today. David, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit in terms of what you've done in the Jewish community, give a little background.
Sure. Well, in the Austin Jewish community, I moved here back in 1999 to go to college, and after I got done with college and realized it's to make more of an effort to meet people when you get out of college, I started getting involved in young adult division events within the Austin Jewish community, and just started going to things like happy hours and other events like that. And then throughout the past 10, 12 years, I've sat on a lot of different committees and boards. I've been on National Young Leadership Cabinet through Jewish Federation North America. I've done the Young Leadership Program in the Austin Jewish community. I did the Glass Leadership Institute with ADL. I've done the ROI community, which is part of the Schusterman Foundation. Just been real active within Jewish life. Right now I'm co-chairing with my girlfriend and another couple in the community the first Austin community-wide event called Ignite. That's in March 25th, 2018 at the JW. So I grew up in a Jewish community in Columbia, South Carolina. It was a much smaller community, but Judaism and my Judaism was always important to me and my family, and it was a tight-knit, smaller community, but it was really important growing up.
So, becoming an adult, as you will, with quotes around it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what made you stick with it? So I agree, you know, when you're a kid and you have that influence from your parents, you know, like, it's very important. And then I think there's a divide of, like, when you become a quote-unquote adult, of, you know, how does that stay important? I mean, first of all, that list is, like, somewhat, you know, that's pretty cool. I mean, I wanted to be like, what, that's it? That's all you did? Really?
Yeah. Well, there's some more stuff in there I left out.
Oh,
but-
go ahead, please. Spew it.
No.
No, you should. I think you should. It's important.
Well, the Maccabi games were in Austin in
Right.
2013, so I was delegation head for
Oh,
the
yeah,
Austin
that was-
community.
that was a big deal.
Yeah, so the Young Adult Division, before this community event, had a Young Adult Division annual event called Milestone, where each year there's an honoree, so I was the first honoree for that.
You were the first honoree.
I was, yeah.
See, that was one of my first events here in Austin, was going
Yeah.
to Milestone.
Yeah.
You were the first one.
Yeah,
Wow.
2010.
That's a big deal. I think.
Thanks. Just other stuff like that, boards, committees. I've been on 6 study missions with Jewish Federations North America all over the world. The last one was in India this past February. Just a lot of different stuff, a lot of cool experiences. I've seen a lot of really good things, and I've seen some negative things.
Okay.
I think anytime you get involved in any sort of organization, especially one as big as Jewish Community, Jewish Federation, you're gonna find that and learn about that.
Mhm.
But for this conversation, we'll keep it topical and light.
Of course.
It's been a really good experience to date.
Yeah.
To date, for the most part.
And in pushing forward, both, you know, in your own personal life, as well as just, you know, I guess having a sense of responsibility as a Jew to push that forward.
Right.
You know, what do you think some of the core pillars that you think you're going to instill in the next generation, whether it's your own unborn children or, you know, not, just in general?
Well, I think that the biggest problem with Judaism and the growth of Judaism and just kind of, nonprofits and community building outside the Jewish community is that we just don't live in a very philanthropic world. So people are not brought up to be philanthropic. And I think more so within the Jewish community, with our generation and the other generations after us that are coming up, the need is not there like it was when our grandparents and great-grandparents and were immigrating to America.
Like real stuff.
And they had to stay a community because that's what they needed to survive. So for better or worse, there's been a lot of success within the Jewish community, financially, and the state of Israel was established, and even in the worst neighborhood in the world, Israel is a leading innovator in the world, and
they are.
Major. It's just a very impressive place and just an amazing place to be. But because of all of this success, mind you, there's still a lot of challenges, tremendous challenges,
right,
that need the community to stay strong. The need wasn't there like it was, right? So there's from a financial perspective, from a community building perspective, because the need wasn't there as much, it wasn't instilled in the next generation like it was. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is that you have some attrition going on and assimilation going on, and because of that, the sense of Judaism is going away. And I think I think the business model of Jewish community building is outdated. So I think in the past it's been very campaign-centric, right? Like, you got to give because it's what you're supposed to do, and you have to do it to grow the community, because if not us, then who, if not now, then when, right? And that's what they've always said, and that's what we continue to say, right? Well, I think because things have changed so much, that message doesn't work so much. And I think the campaign-centric business model, where you hit somebody up once a year and say, hey, we need your money, thanks, we'll see you next year, or come out to the one event, thanks, see you next year, without any sort of community building is not working. And so I think, a business model that relates to community building and outreach and engagement needs to be there. They're not mutually exclusive, outreach and engagement and campaigning. They go together. It's like if you take somebody out on a date, you don't take them out for a date and then immediately try to take them to bed, right? Like, you want to get to know them, you want to establish a relationship, you want to create value before you ask for more.
Whether it's in business, whether it's with a woman or
Right.
a man, or whatever your thing
Right.
is, whatever it is.
Right.
And it's the same thing with real estate, in fact.
Right.
It's the long game. It's
Right.
not like this quick fix.
Right. So I think now more than ever, the Jewish community needs to create value for its constituency, more so than ever, right? It's not just about being available for the high holidays, right? It's about educating. It's about starting young. It's about showing people what it's all about, educating what the Jewish community does. I mean, there's the alphabet soup at Jewish Community and Federation of
Right.
Jaffe and JDC, and then you go, out of Jewish Federation, or like ORT, or you go to Jewish Federation, talk about like APAC, and then you talk about ADL, which ADL is not technically a Jewish organization, but a lot of Jewish people are involved with that, and what the ADL speaks for is incredible in its own right? But it's about educating about the need that's out there and the importance. And a good friend of mine told me a statistic, he told me this a couple of years ago, that something like 90% of Jewish people want to be engaged in Jewish life, but only 15 or 20% are engaged in Jewish life.
I've heard a similar statistic.
And so, why is that? It's just because, people always, it's easy to say, oh, I'm busy, I get busy, but if the engagement's not there, and the education's not there, and the value's not there, then, why are people going to come do it? And it really then comes down to people who really feel the responsibility to carry on the tradition. And because the attrition in the community, if this continues to go on for generations, it's going to be real problematic.
Very problematic.
Jews have survived throughout the sands of time through great persecution, so
Yes,
we have a lot of faith, and there's a lot of pride for me in that, to stay connected to the community because of our history, of perseverance. But I really think that what's so special about the community is, even though in situations where people get seemingly disengaged or not reached out to, they still want to be involved.
They really do.
They really yearn for it. I mean, you're an example of it, right? Like, you moved to Austin, you're new, you want to get involved. It's just, how can you do it?
Since day one.
Since day one, right? But your exception proves the rule, right? Because not everybody's going to be that aggressive to get involved.
For sure.
But if there's a place for them to come and have that place to be involved and engaged and grow, then the sky's really the limit.
I agree. That's a really good, point that you bring up, in that I just find it to be so important that I find personally responsible to help carry on the next generation and instill those beliefs, no matter what. Because if it continues a certain way, it could almost be we become our own worst enemy.
Yeah, well, I think there's parts of Judaism, of community that's already happened like that, right? Like, there's tensions between the different sects in our religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
From Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox,
Right.
Chabad, and how they, keep their faith and how they see Judaism, how it should be lived, and how, the ultra-Orthodox don't think the modernization of the religion is acceptable. And I think that, when you talk about faith and belief, it's just that. And it's really hard to tell somebody that what they believe is not good enough.
Everyone
when
is,
you can't
right.
really, this would be a much larger conversation too, right? But can you really prove that there is a God, right? You can't. I don't think you can really prove that. It's not a scientific thing that you can
Correct.
prove. So it's a faith-based thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if it's a faith-based thing, whether it be Judaism or Christianity or Islam or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who is anybody to say that what you believe is not good enough?
Correct.
Because at the base of it, at some point, right? Because I think most of these religious texts say that God handed down his, handed down his word through somebody, right? And somebody wrote that down, right? So however you believe it or not, somebody wrote that, however many years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, whatever religion that you're buying into and you believe into, somebody wrote that down. And so, at the end of the day, most of those stories are telling the same story when you look at the religion. Maybe it's just a little bit shifted in certain ways and what the names are of the people that we're following. But
Yeah, but I also think that there's something very special culturally about being Jewish, and there's
Absolutely.
like this understanding between one another that I've not seen other people experience, I guess, like I have.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the culture of Judaism, and I've had this conversation with people where they say you can't, or some people say, I'm culturally Jewish, but I'm not religious. And then I've heard other people say, you can't be culturally Jewish and not be religious. You can't, the culture of Judaism has a religious aspect to it, right? So, again, it just goes back to, it's just people, right? People are just going to disagree about things. The thing that bothers me most is that we're such a small group, although we're small and mighty, but there's no reason to have any division amongst Jews, right?
Agreed.
And I think, again, it goes back to, you can, it's just, this has been something I've been talking about a lot this week, but like, if you're gonna, certain people are gonna live they're gonna perceive a Jewish life to be lived by the halakha, right? The 613 Jewish laws, and if you don't live it